Somewhere right now in a garden in southern Mexico, a low mat of green leaves is quietly spreading across the ground, creeping over the soil. Rooting as it travels the way mint takes over a corner of a yard. Most people would step right over it without a second glance. But pinch off a single leaf, touch it to the tip of your tongue, and something almost impossible happens. It's sweet. Not mildly sweet, blindingly, unfairly sweet, more than 1,000 times sweeter than table sugar. And as far as your body is concerned, it carries essentially no calories at all. So here's the question that should already be bothering you. If a plant like this exists, cheaper than sugar, easier to grow than a houseplant, sweeter than anything in your kitchen, why have you almost certainly never heard its name? Why isn't it in every diet soda, every sugar-free label, every coffee shop on earth? We've been told that stevia and the little coloured packets are the frontier of sweetness without a cost. That story is missing a chapter. And the missing chapter is more than 400 years old. Welcome to Root Vault. If you'd rather remember what the world forgot than let it slip away for good, take 1 second and subscribe, because this is exactly the kind of knowledge that very nearly disappeared for good. The plant is called the Aztec sweet herb. Botanists know it as Lippia dulcis, and dulcis is simply the Latin word for sweet. But its oldest name is far older than any Latin. The Aztecs called it tzopelic xihuitl, which means, plainly, sweet herb. They grew it, they used it, they understood exactly what it could do, centuries before Europe had the faintest idea it existed. Then, in the year 1570, a Spanish physician named Francisco Hernández stepped off a ship into what Spain was calling the New World. He had not come to conquer. He had been sent personally by King Philip II on an extraordinary mission to catalogue the medicine of an entire continent. Over the next 6 years, Hernández documented more than 3,000 plants, writing down their names and their uses in careful Latin, page after page. And somewhere in that mountain of thousands, he described one small, ordinary-looking herb that tasted shockingly, unforgettably sweet. He wrote it down. He even had it drawn. And then, for nearly 4 centuries, the world essentially forgot it ever existed. But here is the part almost nobody hears. That book did not burn. It did not vanish. Hernández's descriptions survived, copied, translated, reprinted, sitting quietly on library shelves, read by scholars who noticed the sweet herb and simply turned the page. The knowledge was not lost in a fire or sealed in a tomb. It was hiding in plain sight, right there on paper, for 400 years. Waiting for a single person to take it seriously. And in 1985, one team finally did. Most people never learn how this plant came back. A group of scientists at the University of Illinois at Chicago had a strange and brilliant idea. Instead of testing plants at random, the slow, expensive way researchers usually hunt for a new natural sweetener, they did something almost no one thinks to do anymore. They went back and read the old books, the ancient Mexican botanical texts, including the records left behind by Hernández himself 4 centuries earlier. They were quite literally searching 400-year-old handwriting for leads, and one plant kept surfacing, described again and again as intensely, remarkably sweet. So they tracked the living plant down, ground up its leaves, and pulled out the exact molecule responsible for the taste. When their results ran in the journal Science that year, the title said, "Everything, an intensely sweet compound discovered by reviewing ancient literature." They had found a treasure by reading a dead man's notes. And here's the detail that changes everything. The compound they isolated is what chemists call a sesquiterpene, and they gave it a name, hernandulcin, after Hernández, the very man whose 400-year-old book had led them straight to it. A panel of human tasters rated it at more than 1,000 times sweeter than ordinary sugar. Sit with what that actually means. A trace amount, a speck you could barely see, carries the sweetness of an entire spoonful of sugar, which is precisely why it delivers virtually no calories. There's almost nothing there to burn in the first place. It doesn't feed the bacteria that rot your teeth. Chemically, it isn't sugar at all. It simply tricks your tongue into believing that it is. Now, here's the comparison that should genuinely stop you. You've probably heard stevia praised as the natural alternative to sugar, and stevia truly is impressive, somewhere in the range of 200 to 300 times sweeter than sugar. This little Aztec herb leaves it in the dust, more than 1,000 times. And unlike the crops behind most of the sweeteners in your pantry, which need farmland, harvests, factories, processing, this one grows like a weed in a pot on a windowsill. Think about that. A plant that outperforms the darling of the entire health food aisle, growing for free in the dirt, and almost no one alive has heard its name. So picture it in the ground. The Aztec sweet herb is a low, sprawling perennial. It hugs the soil and throws out horizontal runners in every direction, rooting as it goes exactly the way mint colonizes a flower bed and refuses to stop. It craves heat and full sun. In warm climates, it spreads into a living green carpet across the ground. In colder ones, gardeners simply keep it in a container and carry it indoors before the first frost. Its tiny white flowers cluster into little stacked buttons. It asks for almost nothing in return. And every single leaf on the plant is loaded with that impossible sweetness. But sweetness was never the whole story, and here's what the old records actually tell us. Long before any chemist ever touched it, the people of Mexico and Central America used this herb as medicine, most of all for coughs. The Aztec physician Martin de la Cruz set down native plant remedies in writing. The Spanish friar Bernardino de Sahagún, who spent his life documenting Aztec knowledge before it could be erased, recorded their plants as well. To these people, this was not candy. It was a working remedy, brewed and taken with real intention. And that intention matters because the same herb that could sweeten a cup of tea was also something they handled with genuine respect. There was a reason for that respect, and it happens to be the exact reason this plant is still not sitting on a shelf in your grocery store today. Because here is the twist that no marketing campaign on earth could ever fix. Inside those sweet leaves growing in the very same tissue is another compound entirely, camphor. In some analyses of the plant, more than half of its essential oil turns out to be camphor, and camphor in anything more than small amounts is toxic to the human nervous system. This is the cruel joke buried at the heart of the Aztec sweet herb. The miracle and the hazard are braided together in the same leaf. For half a century now, chemists have wanted to pry them apart to keep the 1,000 times sweetness and strip away the camphor, and there is still no simple, reliable way to do it. That is the real reason this plant never dethroned sugar. Not a corporation that buried it, not a government that banned it. Something stranger and far more honest than any conspiracy. Nature packed a real wonder and a real poison into the exact same place, and we have not yet figured out how to separate the gift from the danger. What we lost here wasn't stolen from us. It was simply too complicated to keep. So how do you actually meet this plant for yourself? Carefully. Start with the name because names matter here. Look for Lippia dulcis, also sold as Phyla dulcis, Aztec sweet herb or honey herb. It grows easily from seed or from cuttings. Give it full sun and well-drained soil and treat it exactly like mint, meaning put it in a pot unless you genuinely want it running loose across your entire garden, because it will. In cold regions, keep it in a container and bring it inside for the winter. Now the part that matters most of all, if you ever do taste it, use only the fresh leaves. Drying them concentrates the camphor and strips out the sweetness, which is the worst of both worlds. A single leaf, maybe two, is more than enough to sweeten a whole cup of tea. Understand what this plant is: a garden marvel and a traditional medicine, not a daily sugar substitute, and absolutely not something to eat by the handful. And there are hard lines you don't cross. Do not give it to young children. Do not use it if you are pregnant or trying to become pregnant. Historically, this same herb was used to bring on miscarriage, and that is not a risk anyone should gamble with. If you take medication or have any health condition, treat it as the potent botanical it truly is and talk to a professional before you try it. Respect it the way the Aztecs did, and it just might be one of the most astonishing plants you will ever grow. So go back to that mat of green leaves spreading quietly across the soil, the kind of thing you'd step right over without ever looking twice. Now you know what's actually in it. A molecule 1,000 times sweeter than sugar, named for a physician who died 400 years ago, hidden inside a book until someone finally sat down and read it. The most extraordinary sweetener on the planet has been creeping across the ground this entire time, carrying in that very same leaf the exact reason we were never quite able to keep it. If this is the kind of story you do not want the world to forget, subscribe. The vault is full of them. And the next plant we are going to open up was once traded like treasure, worth more than its weight in silver, before it quietly vanished from almost every kitchen on Earth. You are not going to want to miss what it was.